Industry is based on predator-prey relationships. The equation is simple. If you don't know who the predator is, you are the prey. And some of this comes out in some mistakes that we make, not only as individuals, but big institutions, people at big institutions make these mistakes. The poker game mistake. Ask somebody else who's playing the game how you should bet. That's smart, huh? From a trading perspective, if you reveal your portfolio to the counterparty and ask for their opinion, you're likely to have some problems with that. But my brother-in-law told me it was a good investment mistake. This is Bernie Madoff and the rating agencies. Rating agencies assess the credit quality of large financial institutions. Rating agencies make huge revenues from financial institutions asking them to rate securitized assets. Agencies essentially play the same role as many of the sincere but misguided people who referred people into Madoff. The carton of eggs mistake. Don't check to see if the eggs are broken before you open the box or before you buy the box. Wall Street will sell it at considerable profit just because investors won't take the time to look at the underlying collateral. There is no substitute for checking the collateral piece by piece. This is a great little metaphor for what Goldman Sachs is under investigation for right now. They sold cartons of eggs and didn't bother to tell anybody you might want to check the eggs beforehand. On the next page, the War of the Worlds mistake. Believe in evaluation technique because everybody else does it. That's a good reason. Social proof strategy. The internet a few years back brought us clicks and eyes, that those were going to be ways to evaluate companies that had never made any money. So if someone tells you that there are Martians on Earth, you might want to take a look around, see if you actually see them before taking it for granted. And the fake Rolex watch mistake. This is if you ask the investment bank that sold you the fake Rolex watch what it's worth. This happened with auction rate securities that ran into so much trouble at the beginning of 2008. Wall Street had created these securities and sold them to the public, but they did so in a way that artificially supported the pricing and trading or liquidity of the bonds. And so Wall Street said they were worth something close to par, but for the last 2 years, there has essentially been no tradable market for these securities. We're going to transition now and look at how emotions come into play. Studies confirm really probably what most of us have in terms of our general understanding of how we work. We've got the conscious and the unconscious. We've got reasoning and emotion. And we believe that there are two systems that are work in the brain, the reflective system and the intuitive system. And by intuitive, we also refer to the emotional or affective system. The intuitive system tends to be automatic, effortless, associative. We associate things with our emotions. Rapid, the process is opaque, meaning we don't really know how it works and we're not really aware of it working most of the time. And it's experiential. It's driven off of our experiences. The reflective system is controlled, effortful, deductive, it's slow, very self-aware when we're being deliberate about analyzing something, and it's the rational part of us. Now, there's no doubt that U.S. culture encourages us to deny emotion. We view affective responses to risk as irrational, and we publicly recognize thinkers and penalize those that have visible emotions. Emotions are a handicap in the business world for sure. But what we know from research today is that nothing could be further from the truth. Reasoning and emotion operate parallel to one another and support one another in processing. The reflective system, in order to be effective, requires input from the intuitive system. It's been shown that people that can't access the intuitive system because of perhaps a brain injury don't make very good decisions. In fact, make decisions that are quite poor and cause problems for themselves. We also know that when our emotional reactions diverge from our cognitive opinion, when they're going in kind of two different directions, our stomach or emotions taking us one way and the cognition's taking us another, that our emotions tend to override the cognition. Next page. There's also evidence that emotional reactions guide us not only through the first time that we experience an event, but through subsequent times because of conditioning and what we believe or what we refer to as a marker that then later informs us how we should behave. As you might expect, both fear and anxiety have a tendency to reduce our willingness to be taking risk. And feelings of ease or difficulty for a task that come from how information is processed impacts our perspectives on risk. When we find a task to be easy to do, we're more willing to do it, and we assume that task to have lower risk. Just because we think that it's easy. If it's hard to do, we assume that there's greater risk in it, and we're a little less likely to do it. And it goes so far, you wouldn't think this on a rational level, but it goes so far as to we're affected by typeset. So if it's big and bold and easy to read, we don't perceive there to be risk in the activity. Whether there is or isn't, we perceive less risk. And if it's tiny little print or really, kind of scrollish and hard to read, there's something wrong with that. There's risky there. So how good are we at reading the fine print in a prospectus? Or how likely are we to read the prospectus from cover to cover? How about mood in general? Mood impacts our ability to process information. It also matches up with how the problem is framed. So that if we're in a good mood and the framing of the situation is positive, we tend to be willing to go forward with it and are comfortable with it. If we're in a bad mood and it's framed positively, there's a dissonance there and we struggle with that decision. We do better if we're in a bad mood when something is framed negatively. Our sense of security. Researchers have found fairly recently that there's an association between certain kinds of physical contact and financial risk-taking. A momentary touch on the shoulder by a woman increases financial risk-taking. They believe that there are connections based on other research that we know around the importance of physical contact in our emotional, mental, and physical well-beings. And it's been well documented in actually not just human beings, but all kinds of creatures, including spiders. The researchers suggest that a simple pat on the back by a woman in a way that connotes support may evoke feelings that are similar to the sense of security afforded by a mother's comforting touch in infancy. A handshake doesn't do it, and the shoulder touch by a man doesn't do it as well. So emotions matter. So we've covered some examples about reasoning and emotions over the course of the last few slides, and how they fail us in a number of ways. When both reasoning and emotion fail us in a dramatic sense, we can find ourselves as a victim of fraud. How many of you saw the movie The Dark Knight? Just a handful of you. My sense was that the sociopathic behavior there, while it was more dramatic in one regard, wasn't any different than Bernie Madoff's behavior, quite sociopathic. So Madoff's spectacular ripoff, that was a black swan kind of event, and probably not many of us could even imagine something like that happening. There were investors in 40 countries. The November 2008 statements that he produced had led their clients to believe that they had worth of $65 billion. There were 339 hedge funds of funds, allegedly sophisticated guys that had invested with Madoff, 59 other asset management companies, international institutions such as Grupo Santander, Fortis Bank, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, and 57 investors in the state of Arizona. It was a classic Ponzi scheme. It was built on a very willing suspension of disbelief and the lure of high and stable returns. It was one based on exclusivity. People consider themselves fortunate to be clients, and he exploited the trust and friendship that existed among groups of people that had things in common. He claimed that his success depended on